freedom, seed of freedom, awake and flourish, awake and flourish, brown leaves unfurling, brown leaves unfurling, unto the sky, unto the sky, healing risen. Send down your water, and wash the blood from off the sand.
Thank you, Lucy. We'll be hearing more from Lucy tonight, maybe from now on. My name is Dave Bonowitz. I'm again welcoming everybody. I'm the executive director of the Action. And tonight, we're all part of the Abolitionist Action Committee, which created this event 30 years ago when Bill Pelkey and Marietta Yeager and Rick Halperin and Cathy Ford all stood together on the plaza in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, and were thrown off because they were standing there holding hands. And a police officer thought they were praying. And the rules on the plaza are very subjective. Up to a police officer to decide what's okay, what's not. So anyway, that created what we have now. 30 years later, there's dozens of us. This is actually, if I can recall correctly, one of the first times we really had the kind of solid crew, enough that people could be resting inside. We still have a full setup outside. We still have a group of people going off to a museum to check it out, which is how it should be, right? So we're going to hear a little bit more about the past Vigil and the history of things tonight, but we're also going to be hearing some really deep and powerful voices that that are going to take us into some of the nightmares that our country has created. So I do want to ask Grace, maybe, or Heidi, who are watching online, or Rachel, if you could just text me and let me know if the sound is okay with me just speaking. And is there anybody here that's having any difficulty hearing me speak in the room? Because we do have a microphone, and as a hearing impaired person, I recognize that sometimes you need them. So is anybody here having trouble hearing? All right, then to our speakers, I would ask that you speak loudly and clearly so that everybody can hear. And if I hear from our friends who are watching online that the sound is troubling, then we'll use the microphone. Is that cool?
Yes.
All right, so our first speaker is a longtime friend and ally, and a person that I first met during the during the inauguration of the parade with George W. Bush.
Protest of the inauguration.
What's that?
Protest of the inauguration.
Right. Inaugural parade in the protest area where we got to see George Bush got right up to the edge of it. They got in the car and they zoomed past us. But Sandra Joy and I were having a conversation about the work. And we planned to meet up there. And tonight we get to hear about the work that she's been doing on sabbatical, traveling all over the country, talking to people who have witnessed executions. Sandra Joy. And
Research assistant. Hi, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
So I teach at the university. I'm used to protecting my voice, so but let me know if you can't hear me. I'm going to talk about no more than 15 minutes is what I'm told. So I might even talk less to give opportunity for questions. Or maybe there's a Q&A at the end of all this. I don't know. Is there a Q&A at the end of all this?
yes, there can
Okay,
be.
so
And maybe if you could just take a step forward, that'd be good too.
sure. Come on, Nova.
And you don't have to hold the dog either. I think
I know,
you're
right?
okay.
She and I become joined at the hip because as Abe said, for the last 8 months, I've been in my RV with my dog, traveling the country. Every 10 years or so, we're given an opportunity for a sabbatical at, I teach at Rowan University in South Jersey. And, yay. And so I'm a sociologist, and my research has always been definitely related, although a book that I wrote with some colleagues before this was OWA, Life Without Parole, which I'm also opposed to. Slow death, debut. So, but with this project, no, have a seat, honey. Have a seat. You're good. So with this project, I sought to examine how witnessing an execution impacts all parties involved. And the genesis of this project began actually nearly 18 years ago. This coming November will be 18 years since I witnessed my friend's execution in the state of Delaware. I actually spoke about that experience at a fast and vigil, I want to say the next year, it was 6 or 7. I remember talking about the trauma that I went through. It was, by the day's standard, I have to say that, botched, and it took him 21 minutes to die. By today's standard, that's not even hardly a botched execution. I know that from talking to people all over the country. But I was so traumatized when I witnessed my friend's execution. I remember looking around the witnessing room, the death chamber, and wondering, I was like, this is really messed up. I was very traumatized. I was outraged. I said, how's everybody else in here receiving this? Is it just me, or is this really, really messed up? So I did process my experience in an autoethnographic account that I published in 2010, but I always in the back of my mind wanted to return to this topic to interview all parties present to find out how a person's personal background, life experience, and the role that they played that night or day, if you're Oklahoma or some of these others like to kill first thing in the morning, impacts what they take away from that experience. So my hypothesis is that regardless of the role a person plays in their witnessing experience, they walk away severely impacted, if not traumatized. And so I can tell you so I set up my RV. October 20th, I saw some of you along the road in South Carolina, when you were Journey Hope, I stopped. In Oklahoma, I saw some people. In Ohio, I saw some folks. Some of you know firsthand, and I called some people to get some resources like Cathy and others. So I've always wanted to travel the country, I've always wanted to go in an RV, so I figured, you know what, I'm going to do this way for 2 reasons. One, I always want to do it, but we weren't entirely out of COVID. I felt like I'd be safest in a contained environment. It keeps me out of airports and hotels and rental cars, and I'm in nature, I'm outside, right? And I did not get sick, not even once, not COVID or anything, so that worked. And secondly, I felt like the breaks at the campsites in between these very, very heavy, intense interviews would give me an opportunity to commune with nature to reduce the potential of re-traumatizing me from the memories that I have from my experience. State I was raised in, and I was born in St. Louis, but I was raised in Virginia, and I had 4 or 5 interviews lined up there. I kind of skirted through Virginia, the Carolinas, and Georgia rather quickly because I had to get to Texas in time for a wedding of a former student. I think I got at least eight or nine of those folks that I'm planning to interview, or Washington when I go to Virginia, a dear friend. I got to know 40 of them through my work with Witness to Innocence for a couple of years with Winnow and others. So that's been really helpful to locate them. By the time it's all said and done, by the end of the summer, and I will be going, and I'm mentioning these states in case you're in them and are, or if you're not in them and you know people who have witnessed, when I finish Virginia, I'm gonna go back home for a couple of weeks. I'm gonna run up to Woodstock, New York, because I met Jane Davis, I don't know if anybody knows, who witnessed a Georgia execution 30 years ago. And she called me, word is getting out now, she called me, I know about your study, I have to be in it. Please bring your RV up to Woodstock. I'm like, all right. I wanted to go to New England, but nobody got executed up there except for the one in Connecticut, so I may try and stop by Connecticut and see if I can get some of those witnesses. So but I have friends in Vermont, and they're like, come up here. I'm like, I can't. You know, that I'm going to, as you can imagine, a lot of the Bible Belt is where I spend most of my time. I traveled through about 35 states. I stayed in at least 25 of them. I clocked 18,000 miles of my RV. I trailed my Nissan Versa and clocked another 14,000 on that because I would park the RV at an RV park, hop off the car, drive around and do interviews that way. But I zigzagged the south, and then I went over to New Mexico, got our friend Juan Melendez in Albuquerque, got to hang out with him and Judy, beautiful. One of the places when people say, well, which one are we going? Maybe Albuquerque, beautiful, beautiful place. If you've been there, you know. California, Arizona, Arizona, up and down Arizona, California, Oregon, where I got to see Allie. I should have mentioned that earlier on when I mentioned seeing people on the road. And Allie came and hung out with her dog Jack for a couple of days in RV, so that was cool. And then Washington State down to Boise, Idaho, when it just passed legislation to bring back the firing squad. So that was interesting, the interviews that I had in Idaho. And then our dear friend Randy Gardner helped me find some people. I was in Salt Lake, Utah for a while, where I interviewed an executioner who had killed 17 people in the state of Arizona and lives in Salt Lake now. I will say I had to channel my best Meryl Streep for some of these interviews because some of them are very, very pro-death penalty, which they told me, I'm pro-death penalty, is that okay? I'm like, absolutely, I want to interview all people who witnessed. And honestly, if I can show, if I find, I'm not going to fabricate data, but if I find that those who witnessed Oklahoma City, and she said, they lied to me. They told me this would help. They told me this would offer healing to watch the man who murdered my grandparents die. And she said, it made me worse. What I saw in that room was pure evil. I want no part of it. I will speak against the death penalty until the day I die. I don't care who says anything about it. She suffered some say it again. PTSD, yes, that too. But some retaliation or anger from her family, because not everybody in the family feels the same way. They're upset with her for being outspoken. She says, I don't care. What I saw there is horrible. It made it worse. And she said, this does not help the victims' families, in my view. She said, you know all of this, Suzanne talked about this. It only feeds their political careers. And I'm like, behind the camera, I'm like, when we did a cut, I'm like, you know they're gonna say I fed you all this information today, Lindsay. She goes, I know, but I don't care, I feel this way, and I'm gonna say it until I die. So I had some very powerful interviews. I interviewed all of those categories of people, and I felt a little gross sometimes because I'm like, oh, a hanging in Washington State, gotta get him. You know, oh, firing squad in Utah. Didn't feel good, but I really wanted to get the extreme cases to show. So I interviewed people who witnessed hangings, firing squad, gassings, a couple gassings, bunch of electrocutions, very, very botched lethal injections, the gamut. All kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds. This has not been done before. I honestly feel like I need another trip around the country to get all the people I missed, or to avoid doing the real work of, you know. It's more fun. It's more fun to like talk to people and be out in the RV. I can tell you, there's a whole second book and even a stand-up comedy routine I have about living the RV life. So stay tuned. That's less important than, oh yes, it's a very specific demographic out there, y'all. And in Florida in particular, ooh, Suzanne, ooh, get me out of this RV park as fast. Where's the hippies? I can't wait to go to the West Coast. I want some vegan, mountain hiking, granola eating hippies. Where are they? So that was tough. I had some tough moments, man, in the RV park, because I had magnets on my RV doors that says, follow my journey at bearingwitnesses.com. In here somewhere is a plastic bag that has treats of hers and a box of my cards. And when I ran out, I left it, so I can't find it in this room somewhere, but I do have cards. And it has my website. One of the cards, I'll find it here in a minute. I just can't seem to find it. If somebody sees a white bag, it might be mine. My website is bearingwitnesses.com, and I have a brilliant techie nephew who developed this for me. And when you go to bearingwitnesses.com, you can see images of all the people I've interviewed. I just interviewed somebody yesterday, actually, it's not posted up yet, and I found when I was in Indiana, he witnessed 2 state executions in Indiana. I have to specify, because I also, when I was zigzagging, interviewed quite a few of the federal witnesses in Terre Haute area. Bloomington. I just interviewed, because he lives in DC, so I just interviewed him yesterday, a spiritual advisor who witnessed an execution 23 years ago and was crying intensely. So I interview people as early as right out of an execution, like Reverend Jeff Hood in Oklahoma, within a couple of hours of witnessing as a spiritual advisor, all the way to decades later, to assess the longitudinal impact of this trauma on people. And I can tell you, and I often cry right along with them, it's almost making me cry to think about certain people. Dick Burr, whew, I was a puddle. You know Dick Burr? He's a saint in Texas. I audibly sobbed with him. I had to turn the camera off. And most recently, Marshall Dion in Pittsburgh and witnessed a gassing in North Carolina. I don't need to go into all the details. You can only imagine. I didn't want to go in 15 minutes. I'm sure I've probably reached that by now. So let me stop talking, and at some point, maybe if people have questions for me, if you have any witnesses in the states of, I have about 4 or 5 in Virginia I've lined up already, but then in August I'm going to Virginia, the Carolinas. Chris, I'll visit you. I saw Carrie when I went through, and I've been talking about her. So North and South Carolina, Georgia, and then before the fall is out, maybe in between semesters, I gotta go back to Florida. I did get Ron McAndrew down there, and Derek Jameson is now in Ohio, and another deputy secretary of the board who was very pro-death penalty. He said some very disturbing things, and I was so good, y'all. I mean, the executioner in Salt Lake City, I was trying so hard to be just nice to this man who was very pro-death penalty, has no shame in killing 2 people by gas and 50 by lethal injection. But he's texting me now, hey, how are you doing? I'm like, I did too good of a job. He thinks we're friends. But it's okay. I will say this. Regardless of the orientation that people feel about the death penalty and why, I felt a kinship to all of them. Because if you've ever witnessed an execution, it's devastating. And it's like, I'm thinking about a couple of people when I'm getting upset like this. And the victim family member in Arizona said this to me. She says, you know, we all were in there. We feel differently, Sandy, but she's pro-death penalty. She felt like justice was served, but it's a horrific experience to watch an able-bodied person, a healthy person being laid down and killed, and having to stand there quiet. I wasn't quiet. I actually had a conversation with my friend back and forth, and nobody picked me up, thank goodness. But most people were made to be very, very quiet, and it's really hard, particularly for someone like me, who's used to being outside in Delaware, previous executions with a bullhorn, yelling and screaming. And now I have to be inside, up close and personal, and be quiet. So it's been a real experience, y'all. It's it's been a big healing for me too, even 18 years later for me to get emotional like this, and to see people 20 and 30 years later after an execution being even extremely emotional. I feel like I had some extra healing in the process. And I feel like I made some connections with people regardless of how they felt. But thank you for listening to that. Stay tuned, a book and a documentary. I've been talking with a German documentarian who is really, really strongly opposed to the death penalty. In fact, refused to become a citizen for his first 11 years in this country because of the death penalty, until he finally had to run it for work purposes. But we're talking this month. Cross fingers. I shouldn't even said that. Although there's this thing about speaking things into existence. So that's what I'm gonna kind of leave it as. Hopefully, because I'm not a filmmaker. I just told myself, Sandy, you can't travel the country and see all these people in all these states and not film them. So I just got a really expensive Saturn camera, thanks to leftover COVID at the university I didn't have to pay for. And on the job training, just learned, but it was a one-person show, y'all. I was the driver, I was the camera crew, I was the travel agent setting up all the places, I was the scheduler, I was the promoter, it was a lot. But anyway, I'm gonna done it with this one right here. The best road dog ever, right, Nova? Nova, I would open up my door at whatever campsite, and there was dozens and dozens of them. And she would look at it, she's like, where the hell you got me going? All right, here we go. Just like that, you know. So she visited every dog park in every state because I would Google dog parks nearby, because not all the, I will say, the shittiest place I stayed at outside of Tampa had the best dog park. So she had a great experience down, you know, when I was in the outskirts of Tampa somewhere. That's the day I saw deer. But there was all around me, DeSantis, Trump, let's go Brandon signs. I was like, anyway, that's enough. All right, thank you.
You want to take the question?
Sure. Does anybody have a question for Nova? It's a lot. I just don't know.
Did you do any interviews with people who witnessed executions from outside the United States?
Oh, executions in other countries? No, Abe, I can't do that too. Melanie? Oh my gosh. No.
One of the people that's helping there is Rose-Avila, who walking down the street in Iran before he emigrated to the corner and came across an execution.
Wow. No, but that's an idea for another project. But yeah, no, that'd be interesting to do cross-national comparison of interesting experiences. I did interview, I will say this, a person in Texas, a journalist, who's witnessed more executions than anybody in this nation and probably the world. You might know who this goes with, yeah. Do you know how many? Want to take a stab at a number of how many executions this guy witnessed?
200.
500.
450.
Oh my God.
450. An AP journalist, because AP journalists get an automatic seat. Almost every state I've noticed that. All other journalists are in a pool where they get a lottery. I heard about some journalists saying this journalist one's like, yay! He's like, put me down. But yeah, this particular individual witnessed 400. He covered almost all the 584 at last count in Texas, probably more now. And I also was I made a business of trying to be in states where they were executing so I could film the vigils outside for filler in between the documentary. Because if you've ever been, and I imagine all of you have, to a vigil, an execution vigil, you're bearing witness. We're all bearing witness. And I'm going to start off with that in my intro. We all bear witness to this in one form or another.
What would you say is the percentage of ethnicity of those who actually watched execution?
Yeah, I tried really hard to diversify my sample as much as I possibly could. But people who are not white, I would say, out of my sample, I have to sit into account. But it was the minority by far. I would say maybe 20%, if that. And yet we know of those who are executed and on the road, it's very different. So, but remember, I'm interviewing wow, did I even get a journalist of color? I got over 20 journalists. I did get some spiritual advisors of color. I got Minister Muhammad, who witnessed Shaka Sankopas. I got him. And I got some others I can't think of right now.
So the person who witnessed all those executions, how was he affected?
So,
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
so Terry asked the person who witnessed those 450 how was he affected? And I asked him, I said, all this is like, he signed off for this to be public, so I'm not saying anything that he's not okay with me sharing. I said, did you ever feel any kind of trauma from these, for witnessing so many? He's like, nope, just doing my job.
Wow.
And I said, really, not even the botched ones? He said, there's never been a botched execution in Texas. He said, botched is a subjective word. And I said, I hope this doesn't go wide what I'm talking about. Anyway, and I said, not even the one where the tooth popped up the person's arm and sprayed blood all over and a female journalist fainted. He said, oh yeah, I was at that one. Well, he got executed. So, there's a might that if you have a body, then the night's not really about. And I should say, this person wasn't an evil person. He was a nice person. He wouldn't say, because he's a non-biased journalist, even though he's retired and could be free to say he didn't. I could only surmise that might have to be the case, simply because it's hard for somebody to witness that much who's opposed and not speak about it. And he's retired. I will say it's the one thing that he still does after retirement. Is witness it.
Since you spoke with people that were involved over many years, did anybody, including who witnessed an execution of somebody who was a juvenile before that was happening?
Right. That was my aim too. I remember, I think there was somebody, I kind of get my heads together to answer the question. I'll write that down. Because I'm not sure off the top of my head who it is, but I do believe there is one person. I don't think it was Kettle okay in Nebraska. I heard journalists who witnessed him, that might have been him. That name sounds
You
familiar.
probably saw a few in Texas because we were a few of
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure he did. Yes, definitely. We didn't talk about it. I asked him if he felt like anybody was innocent in the execution. He said, no, Texas doesn't care. Wow. I mean, you have to have that kind of confidence, right, to be comfortable with it. You have to have that kind of confidence, I guess. But I think, so I have to be really careful as I interpret this data, not to put trauma on people who don't feel it, and not to be condescending and say, oh, you're saying you're not traumatized, but you really are. You're just compartmentalizing. Maybe he's not. I don't know, but it's really hard for me to imagine that it wouldn't. At least, so what I got him and others to, and some would say, I wasn't traumatized, but I think about it every day. This is like years later, and I think he might have been one of the ones. I think about it every day. He was actually a very nice man. His wife came in, lovely woman. I really took to her. She's retired from hospice nurse. I'm like, y'all must have had some interesting conversations over the dinner table over the years. No, she was lovely. They were really nice people. So it just, I don't know. I mean, Texas hasn't had some of the really egregious botched ones like the other states have, so I don't know. Yeah.
What's your feelings about televising it and putting that out on air? I mean, to get people to be aware that this is a shitty.
I think that when Phil Donahue, if you're as old as me, remember that push that he and others had on putting it on TV, was talking about it. It might have been effective, but I think we're so desensitized to violence, I don't support that right now. I think if anything, people would be like, that's all, we need more. You know what I mean? We have, 900 or 1900 channels people can watch with all kinds of violence, all kinds of faces of death, and all kinds of things that people watch. I think people would get really grotesquely interested in it. I think it would be disturbing. I don't think it would be, maybe there's a small group of people who would be like pushed or I did have that conversation with quite a few journalists. Journalists brought that up a lot when I talked to them. So,
Thank you, Sandy. I will share that when they were filming the movie Dead Man Walking,
oh, I interviewed Sister Helen and Steve Earle.
when they were filming the film Dead Man Walking, Magdaleno and I were invited to give out the extras during the scene when the execution protest was happening. There's two executions that happened in the film. The first one, the Sister Helen character was outside the prison. We both appeared briefly in that scene. But while we were raiding around for all the hours and hours of raiding that happens when they're making a film, I had the opportunity to kind of sidle up behind the camera that was interviewing Lord and Borough King, who had just had an execution earlier that week in Louisiana. And he was talking about how he thought my executions were in the middle of behind walls. Nobody sees if they're happening. Nobody knows if they're happening. And gosh, we should be televising them so people could understand what's happening. But I believe actually that he doesn't agree with in his heart with executions. He's now in Mississippi, and we were outside the prison there when he killed a person there. Well, actually, a year ago when they had that execution. Anyway, the point is that even among corrections officials, there's varying opinions. But thank you again, and we can't wait to see the book. When are we going to see it?
I don't know, I'll let you know. So it's gonna be a couple years at least, yeah.
It'll be a while.
Yeah.
So you'll come back to the Fast and Vigil if we're still doing this in a couple of years and do a book signing and a book reading and all of
Sure.
that. So thank you, Sandy.
Yeah.
Just doing my job, I'm going to introduce my boss. Sometimes connections happen and things happen for a reason. And one of the things that's happened is that this organization, Death on the Action, is in leadership on a number of things, but in particular, the bill that's about to be introduced in a couple of weeks, reintroduced, I should say, the reintroduction of the Federal Death Penalty Prohibition Act. And there's nothing better being in a position like mine than having a spokesperson who is as directly as connected to this issue as Sharon Risher. Our board chair is the daughter of somebody for whom the most famous name of a person on federal death row is responsible for that murder. So without further ado, I would just say that whenever we're talking about the federal death penalty, she's the perfect person to be the spokesperson. And I'm so grateful that she lets me amplify her voice as we're doing tonight, and that she took the time to come and be with us on relatively short notice. Sharon Risher,
First of all, I don't know why Abe continues to say I'm his boss, but I guess I am his boss. We approved his salary and benefits and things, so. But thank you all for being here. Being involved with abolition of the death penalty is heavy work. This is not work for the faint of heart. Unless you've been under a rock. My story is one of these stories that sadly in the United States continue to occur. On June 17th, 2015, my mother, cousins, childhood friend, and other parishioners were in their regular Wednesday night Bible study. In walks a 21-year-old white supremacist who had been radicalized from the internet, who got crazy about the Trayvon Martin killing and felt like he had a connection to this. death penalty does nothing to help family members. The death will not bring closure to me or my family, because my mom and my cousin can't come back. They can't be resurrected. The death penalty is horrific, and I'm proud to movement that says this is wrong, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that another person won't have to die through lethal injection or firing squad. The state of South Carolina has reinstated the firing squad. Nobody deserves to die like that, no matter what they do. And see, the thing about the death penalty, we can't pick and choose who dies. Which crime is worse than the other crime? Because anybody that dies by any means is wrong. But you see, my faith tells me that anybody can be redeemed. The Jesus that I love, the Bible that I read through the interpretations of my life experiences tell me that my neighbor is anybody. So that's where I come from, in a place with this death penalty thing. I come from a place of faith. I come from a place where my whole world upside down, the only thing I could rely on was my faith. I want to thank each and every one of you that take the time to be a part of this movement. Whether it's your physical presence, whether it's your finances that you donate to us, this thing is real, and we have to be a part of making this stop. I was asked one time if I had the opportunity to visit Dylan Roof in Terre Haute, would I go? I looked at this person like they were crazy. I said to them, I have given Dylan Roof everything I can give him. I have given him forgiveness. I don't want to see him die. I don't want to have to look in his eyes. I don't want to have to see face. I forgive you. And I cannot look, but I don't have to be there in Terre Haute looking at you, because you have said there is he didn't regret killing those 9 people. He didn't care. So like I said, I have given him all I can give him from the depths of my soul. That God can be to be in places, to stand in places, to talk in places where I have to tell my story.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All of you. We look for every person to find your place in doing something that will help someone else know that they don't have to sit there and count down the days until their execution date. God bless each and every one of you. And thank you.
Thank you.
the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on. The only thing that we did wrong was to wander in the wilderness too long. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on. And the only thing that we did right was to organize and fight. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on. Paul and Silas began to shout together. The jail door opened and they walked out. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Innocent people who see the death
Hey, why was Ruth convicted and sent to a federal prison if it was a state crime?
It's a federal prosecution.
Yeah, he was convicted on 38 counts of a hate crime.
Hate crime.
And so that's why he's in Terre Haute in federal prison.
There is also no hate crime law in South Carolina right now.
Sharon, do you want to take some questions?
Oh,
Awesome. So, Rocky.
now I don't know a whole lot about South Carolina law, and I think Hillary would be able to answer some questions about South Carolina. But, so what was the question?
The federal, why he was sentenced with the federal charge?
Yeah, and so, right, he was charged 38 counts of a hate crime. And because he was tried through the federal courts, that's why he was sentenced to the federal prison in Terre Haute, Indiana. The state did not try him because they felt like the feds had already gotten what they wanted, and so they didn't see the need. And of course, the families, we were done, did not want to have to go through a state trial. And thankfully, Scarlett Wilson, who is the prosecutor, she's a prosecutor, and decided that she would go along with the family. I must say this, Scarlett, on every anniversary, we get an email from her office. June 17th was 8 years. We get an email from her office saying how she always thinks about the families, and she is still there for support. And if we ever need her for anything, she's there. So for me, that says something. When this person every year sends an email to each family member saying again that she's always there for us if we need anything.
Do you
you have any family members that are upset with you for?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have, okay, so I had two siblings that died after my mother. I had a sister that died in 2017. I had a brother that died in 2019 who was deaf. On the day that he was found guilty, my brother who is deaf signed that he want that MF dead. The sister that died, she was like, Sharon, I don't care what you say, I can't go along with that. So we made a pact with each other that you can feel what you feel, I can feel what I feel, but we're still sisters and we don't have our moms. So, yeah. So they're still outlying cousins or whatever. Even one of my children, even for the work that I do, it's like, Mom, I know what you're doing, but I just don't agree with that. And I've learned in life that, not every, but you still can love them anyway and be there for them when they need you. So, thank you.
You heard spoken out around other incidents, and I have to call you on trial in the Parkland shooting going on, and that trial, which it all merges together because of this, you get this opportunity, and I guess you weren't reflected at all about that responsibility that these people feel in doing that.
Most of the mass shootings that have happened since 2015, I got to involvement with Moms Demand Action in every town for God. So when Parkland came up, I knew the people. And, you can understand where they're coming from, even though we don't agree on that. I understand where they're coming from. I know their hearts. So it's hard when you know people personally and they have to go to trial because everything, every step that they have gone through, you have gone through that too. So I try to do my best to show them love. And we might not agree, but that's their choice. But I'm anytime a mass shooting happens, I am thrown right back into that space, that head space, because I automatically know what these people are going through. The tree of life, they're waiting now on that phase of their trial. I think if I remember right, 7 out of the want the death penalty. Talk to you or deal with you because you believe that enemy.
Love you, Sharon. I want gratitude for your New York Times op-ed.
Because of the connections came aid, and
Journey of Hope received that call, and they passed to you.
Community.
Lord, we come right now as a people. It's your people, oh God. Thank you for the circle of love. Thank you for each and every person that lends their heart to this movement. Stir in us, God, a peace that surpasses all human understanding. Give us the courage. Give us the finances. Give us everything we need, God, to continue this fight. To let the others know that everybody is worthy of dignity, worthy of being alive, worthy of having the chance to be redeemed. Help us, oh God, as your people, as we stand in this church this day. And the people of God said, amen, amen. And amen. Amen.
Alan, do you want to switch to the other, the hotspot?
I toggle between hotspot and the internet, and it keeps, it looks strong and then it goes out.
We've got a hotspot there that should be consistent. The folks who are watching on the internet, we've had some internet shakiness, but and for those of us here, if you haven't noticed, it's been raining outside, so I'm glad we're all in good. I want to invite Reverend Hillary Taylor, since she was already up here, to come up and share a little bit about what's happening in South Carolina. And Reverend Hillary Taylor, Executive Director of South Carolina Industry Alternatives to the Death Penalty.
First, a short call and response. Oh, my friend. Oh, my friend. Everything changes in the end.
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 Oh,
Oh.
and following that on Netflix or on any of the news channels, then that made quite the headlines. And from the very get-go, the prosecutor said, we are not pursuing the death penalty for this man. Even though this person had a pile of bodies around him, even though, as his judge said during his sentencing, your family has given people death sentences for less than you have been accused of. On the flip side, in 1944, June 16th, 1944, George Stinney Jr., the youngest person executed in United States history that we know of, right, was executed for the murder of 2 young girls. No evidence, except for the fact that he was a 14-year-old black child who happened to see these 2 young white girls pass by. They asked him, where can we pick maypops, the kind of flower that grows wild in South Carolina? He was the last person to see them. He showed them, pointed where they should go. It's likely that the person who did murder these 2 children was in the party of people that said George Stinney did it. And George Stinney was arrested and kept captive, not able to see any of his family, had terrible trial. I believe his lawyer was an actor, never actually did criminal defense in any kind of way. The jury deliberated for, I think, less than 20 minutes. The trial was less than half a day. He was convicted and he was executed, and all of that within 83 days. Arrest to execution, 83 days. Paper thin evidence, no evidence actually whatsoever. In South Carolina, some of the things that we are trying to do, so not only are we reaching out to victim family members and saying that we are here for you and we want to make sure that South Carolina is actually doing work with victim families, making sure that they have the things that they need to survive, to thrive, to heal, to tell their stories of what happened to them and how we can prevent violence from happening in the first place. Because it's clear, and we have connections to people who are victim families from over 30 years ago, that the death penalty isn't actually working, it doesn't actually provide healing. 30 years even after somebody's execution, some people are still angry from the day, that their loved one was murdered. And that's not evidence of healing, friends. That's not anything. There's no closure in that. I want people to not be angry. I want people to not feel that grief surmounts them and consumes them. I am somebody who comes to this work as a reverend. I, like Sharon Risher, sit with people in trauma spaces. And on one side of the curtain, there's somebody who has caused a horrific accident and is injured from a DUI. And on the other side, there are people who have been hit from that person who is under the influence and is actively dying. SCADP sits in that space with anybody who is impacted by the death penalty. And so if there's anybody watching tonight tonight, who is connected to South Carolina, is somebody who's impacted by the capital system, please call us, please email us. You can find us at www.scadp.org. Please know that we want to work with you and we want to connect with you. Our job is to humanize people who are on death row, mobilize people against the death penalty through education and communities, help people advocate against the death penalty with power holders and stakeholders, and then restore people who have been system impacted to a place of healing and wholeness. One thing I'm particularly excited about that we are doing in South Carolina, not only do we have lots of different speaking events, we have a Journey of Hope coming up in October. Be on the lookout for more information on that. We have bi-monthly education moments online where we read a book about the death penalty or about somebody who was system impacted. You can look at our online website for that. Something that I am most excited about, however, is we have something called the Posthumous Pardon Project. We haven't advertised this very much, but you just heard about the experience of George Stinney Jr. being executed for a crime he did not commit. So it's likely that there are lots of other people who were executed for crimes they didn't commit either. Between the years 1912 and 1962, South Carolina executed 239 people, the vast majority of whom are Black men. We have had two families who have connected to us and said, the first family said, I have been doing some family research, and through my family research, I found that there was this case where somebody was accused of murder. And I'm reading the newspaper articles, and I now have a copy of the transcript, and they couldn't have possibly done it. Like, this whole thing is so racist. There's no way. Meanwhile, back in Greenville, where I live, I was talking to a pastor about this one case where somebody approached me and said, I've been reading these news articles, there's no way that this person could have done this. And this pastor tells me, you know what? Something like that happened to my family. My uncle was executed for a crime he did not commit. And so within the span of 3 months, we had two families who have connected to us and said, there's somebody in my life who we have no idea why they were executed. Can you help us? Can you help us find out more information? And so we are here to also help people whose loved ones have been wrongly executed, have been treated unjustly by the state of South Carolina. We are here to uncover the injustice, to expose the historical racial bias, the ways that the death penalty was used as a legal lynching for probably a lot of people. If you are interested in helping us financially with some of this, if you're interested in looking up some of the cases around these kinds of, again, legal lynchings, we would love for your involvement. If you have questions about how we are doing this, I'm happy to talk to you more about this. I'm grateful for your presence here at the Fast and Vigil. Grateful for your inclusion of me and my interns from last year and all the other folks from South Carolina. Again, my name is Reverend Henry Taylor. I'm from South Carolinians for Alternatives to Death Penalty. You can find us at www.scadp.org. If you want to email us directly, we are at info@scadp.org. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and newly, LinkedIn. Coming soon, TikTok.
Any questions for Hillary?
Glad you're on board.
What was the reaction to the Fast and Vigil of your interns from last year?
Yeah. They were extremely impacted by people who told their stories and shared their pain and shared their trauma, and also said my trauma does not define me. And I had figured out how to use this thing that was so death-dealing and really could have ended me, and did end me, and it ended a part of my life, a part of myself that I knew, but has helped me create new and different ways of life. And so I thank you again for sharing your stories, because they're truly transformational, and they are really changing people's lives, and also changing the ways that people are thinking about the vocation, and thinking about what kind of problem do I want to solve in the world.
I might be mistaking the name, but your posthumous exoneration project, is that just South Carolina, or do you have connections? I'm only asking because I'm trying to do something like that right now for a couple of people, and it's just been very, very difficult to find connections and find people who are willing to engage in exoneration after execution. And
Yeah, I should say this is not exoneration. This is
Okay.
pardon.
okay,
In South Carolina, and this may be the case for other places, pardons are applications. So this is kind of base level. Obviously, if there are families who say, no, we want something more, we actually want to take this to trial. We
Right.
want the case to be vacated, South Carolina has never exonerated anybody, ever. So that is something we are very conscious of. And so pardons are, after consulting with one of the family members in our cases, who is law enforcement connected, she said, this is something that this is what I want. An acknowledgement, that maybe this shouldn't have happened.
right.
A pardon isn't necessarily like, oh, we screwed up, it's totally our fault, right? It's just that it shouldn't have happened, and we are saying, we are giving this, right? I will say in South Carolina, there is precedent for posthumous pardons. The journalist Tom Joyner got 2 posthumous pardons for 2 of his ancestors, Thomas and Meeks Griffith. That happened within the last 10 or 15 years. George Stinney's case was vacated. It was not exonerated as some news outlets falsely reported. So that is an important thing I wanted to share. Thank you, Ellen. But I didn't answer your question. Law schools can be helpful.
Okay.
I know that some groups don't look at posthumous cases, they want to look at current innocent
That's
cases
been my
where people are
problem
alive,
is.
where there's DNA.
Yeah.
So some of it will mean that you have to connect with defense attorney associations to see if there's somebody who's willing to do this kind of work pro bono. We do have some of those lawyers. But there are some people in law schools who are who will say, this is a really interesting project and I don't know anything about this. I'm really interested in learning. And what you'll find is that a lot of law students want to do this kind of research.
Thanks.
Anything else?
Alan, can we move this camera just up into this space here,
Yes.
a little bit closer? This is some hard stuff, and it's gonna get a little bit harder. And it's also very current. Our next 2 speakers are men who are their brother's keepers and live this pain every day. And many of us have probably witnessed it this weekend, during this fast and vigil. So I want to invite Roger Reed to come up and bring us his thoughts in this moment. A story that has been going on way too long and needs a positive ending. Roger, thank you so much for coming and bringing RJ and for allowing us to be here with you in this space.
Well, as Abe stated, I am Roger Reed, the brother of Roger Reed, an innocent man on death row, and this is Roger Reed Jr.
And Will's name as RJ.
Yeah. Well, this fight has been a very, very, very difficult thing to deal with. From the very beginning, because of my brother's innocence, not his innocent claim. My brother is innocent of this crime. If any of you have been keeping up with my brother's case, we've proved in public opinion that my brother is innocent of this crime. There's medical forensic science out there that proves his innocence. There are witnesses out there that of his relationship with Stacy Stites. There are tons of evidence and stuff that has not been tested, that the so-called murder weapon in this case has not been yet tested, but my brother stands on death row to this day. You know, and we've been trying hard to get justice, not just for my brother, but for Stacey Sykes as well, because the murderer is still out there. You know, and we need to bring that murderer to trial to get him convicted. We don't seek the death penalty, but they need to pay for what has been done, not only to Stacey.
People having trouble hearing me. Can you pull that microphone right there?
Well, as I said, not only are we trying to get, you know, justice for my brother Rodney and get his freedom, but we're trying to get justice for Stacey Sykes as well, because her killer is still out there. And we've been traveling all over at every opportunity to speak out about the injustice in my brother's case. In the beginning, right out of the gate, there were so-called a jury of his peers, which was an all-white jury, elderly white jury. That's not his peers, okay? There was evidence that has not been DNA tested still to this day. There are witnesses that still have not been called. There are parts of Stacey Sykes' family that have come, stepped forward and wrote letters to the governor saying they have the wrong person, but yet my brother is still on death row. There are so many things wrong with this case. I believe it could be the flagship for why we need to abolish the death penalty, you know. And, you know, here recently, just a couple of days ago, the Fifth Circuit Court, the CCA, has denied my brother a new trial. And yet we have all this out there that has not even been looked at. How could they do that? They like took the wind out of me. I know a lot of people here have been watching me lay down and just be to myself, because it is draining, it is tiring. It is like state-sanctioned, I don't know. It's crazy. Because this depression, it affects me. You know what I mean? And at times, all I want to do is throw my hands in the air and cry, because there's nothing that I can do to get these people to change their mind and open up their eyes and look at the truth. All we ever asked for was a fair trial in my brother's case. Let us present all of our witnesses. Let us present all of our evidence, and Rodney Reed will free himself.
Amen.
And I still believe that to this day, and I will die believing that, and I will always fight until the end, until we get justice, whichever comes first. And, you know, I have 5 brothers. My dad, he passed away, but he lived long enough to see my brother get his first day. And on his deathbed, he told me, he said, Roderick, I need you to continue to fight for your brother and be there for your mother. And I've tried, but it gets harder, especially when you have these people denying and blocking you at every turn. And I have to go home and look at my mother and my brothers and tell them the fight continues, the struggle is real.
Tell them, bro.
Excuse me. My son has never had the opportunity to touch his uncle. He has never had the opportunity. I have other nephews and nieces that have been denied. My family is in shambles behind us. We haven't been home for over 25 years. We have not been home. And people ask me all the time, what can we do? I say, well, help us. If you can't help us physically, help us financially, help us any way that you can help us. But yet, we're still at square one. And these tears are tears of frustration, of anger at our justice system that is just left justice out in the streets and do what the hell they want on the inside of them doors. And I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm tired. You know, it's hard to get up here and talk about things when they're still happening to you. At this very moment, it is still happening to me. My brother is still locked on death row for a crime he did not commit. And I'm out here trying to do all that I can do. But yet, justice is being denied at every turn. Every time we ask these people to admit something, they deny us. They block it at every turn, and I'm tired. We try to do things the way we want things to be done because we was always raised. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Have respect, you know. And sometimes you get tired, and I'm like, wow, this ain't working, but I will not give up. I will not lose hope. I will always carry those thoughts in my Father's words with me. And so it's hard, you know. But I look at my son here, and he's beside me. He's always willing to be with me and be my support, and it gives me strength, you know. And I thank all of you who have been babysitters for me, because I tell you, you know, this last decision that they made, it took a lot of energy out of me. And I couldn't have watched them the way I should without you people here. And I want to thank y'all for that. It means the world to me. And we are here to free Rodney Reed. We're here to seek justice, not just for Rodney, but for Stacey Stites and the Stites family as well. And we will continue to try to free Rodney Reed. Ain't it right?
Free Rodney Reed.
Yes.
Free Rodney Reed. Are there any questions? Anybody have any questions?
We down with you, bro.
Thank you.
How can we?
Thank you, Roderick. If you go to the webpage, you got all the action. And scroll down, you know, you'll find a picture of Rodney Reed and a petition to sign. And within that petition language, I just added this today, is one of the most emphatic statements I have read by an attorney about the innocence of her client and about the wrongful ways the courts are ignoring the evidence. It was because Juana and Roderick and RJ came here in 2019 because they wanted to lift their voices and they asked us for help, and we said, come, this is the place. They came, they spoke, They did a good job getting media coverage to put them on the front page of the Bastrop County paper. And that inspired the Bastrop County prosecutor to set an execution date. Suddenly, Rodney Reed had an execution date in November. And the whole world, it would seem, our world, started to mobilize. Millions of people literally have signed petitions for Rodney Reed. Not our petition, but somebody's petition. And it has been, it was a large uprising. And we still, what could we do? In October of that year, Roderick and RJ and Juana came back and had another little thing here on the Supreme Court, and then attended the meeting of the Catholic Mobilizing Network, and then participated in the Ohio Journey of Hope, spreading the word, and we did the best that we could to work with them. And then it appeared that the U.S. Supreme Court was going to be considering this case. The question that the lawyers put to the U.S. Supreme Court was, is it constitutional to execute a person who can demonstrate his innocence? The U.S. Supreme Court has already answered the question, is it constitutional to execute a person who may be innocent? And they said, yes, it is. In the Herrera versus Collins decision a couple of decades ago now, and little Herrera was executed. Even though the evidence points to his brother in that case. Fortunately, it seemed that the Supreme Court did not answer that question or say that they had decided to ask that question, because in the interim, between that Friday when they were having their conference, and we were out there having a prayer rally, praying for the right wisdom for this court, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals intervened and established that there would be an evidentiary hearing. And we didn't know when that was going to be, but it kept getting put off. And of course, COVID happened, and it kept getting put off. But that hearing happened 2 years ago. This was in August or September, July, 2 years ago. Next month.
This one.
This month.
This one.
What's that?
July
1st, today.
July.
This month.
This month. Thank you. I've been fasting. Death penalty action was all in support, and we always will be, Roger. But Charles was down there for about 2 weeks. Allie went down there for a week. Brandy Slaughter was down there for a week. I was down there for a week, sitting and watching this evidentiary hearing. And it was just stunning when, in October of 2021, Judge Langley, not related to Scott Langley, Judge Langley issued his recommendation to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. That was his charge. Make a recommendation. Should Rodney Reed get a new trial? And in his order, he said that not a single one of the witnesses brought forward by the Innocence Project, Barry Scheck, Peter Neufeld, they had 10 people down there. The top level of their attorneys were there, and they put forth, I don't know how many witnesses, not a single one of them was credible. I sat there and listened to people who had never been called previously say, yeah, Stacey Stites had a relationship with Rodney Reed. She was friendly with him. And yeah, she certainly was nervous around her husband, or her fiance, I should say, who was actually probably the real killer in this case. I sat there and watched it myself. Charles sat there and watched it. Allie sat there and watched it. Anyway, that recommendation went up to the court, and it was just last Wednesday, the 28th of June, that the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals emphatically agreed with Judge Langley and said the evidence is overwhelming and we're not going to grant a new trial. That's where that case stands. And you can read the attorney's, I guess I want to call it a screed. It's not a screed. It is the most emphatic spelling out of the malfeasance of Texas courts. One of the things that spoke to me in that letter was the fact that basically the judge used the orders that was provided to them by the prosecution. Now, the good news is that Rodney Reed won the U.S. Supreme Court not too long ago in an order that says he's allowed now to ask for DNA testing. There's a question about that because of did he ask too late? We still don't know if they're going to give him the DNA testing. We still don't know what the DNA testing would show because of that evidence is so old and how it's collected and all the other things around that. But there's still hope. There's still space for movement. As fleeting as it may seem, Roderick, the whole world is praying with you and standing with you that we will one day see your brother free. There's another man here. His brother's case is in a little bit of a different space, but equally, the injustice is outrageous. Please welcome Charles Keaton.
I cry for you, Sharon, and your family, because I know the heart. I cried for my brother. I cried for the Lucios. I cried for Anthony Sanchez. I'm going to tell you a story that's how it was told to me. My brother's case is called the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. It's February 14th, about 9:00 p.m., a masked man shows up at a house. He's looking for an informant. He knocks at the door. They let him in. He talks to them. The informant's not there. He pulls a machine gun out, I believe it was a 45 automatic, because he thought that they were hiding him there. They told him he's not here. The guy opens fire. He kills 3 people, and he wounds 3 others. 2 of the adults were females. They were killed instantly. The male survived. I'll get back to him. The children, there were 3 children there. 2 children survived, 1 child died. My brother was accused of that. I tried to get to Washington, D.C. so long ago. I had not a clue what I was going to do when I got here. Because my brother became the face of the 1994 crime bill. President Clinton came into London, Ohio, which was not far from our home, and he spoke of the Bucyrus murders. And while he was speaking, my brother was arrested and charged. The only evidence that anyone said is that, well, there was a large black man out at the scene. That's it. So with the president coming in, we had to have somebody. So our family says, well, they probably just picked Kevin up for questioning based on that large black man. They didn't pick him up for questioning. They picked him right up in the meeting, charged him, put him on television, put him all out there. They talked to the one surviving adult witness who just happened to be a white guy. And he told them, I don't know who shot me. And they kept giving him pictures, and you can see in the photo lineup where Kevin's this big and everybody else a little tweet thing. The guy was heavily medicated. He says that he wrote down the name Kevin Keaton on a piece of paper. The piece of paper got lost. Well, I'll let you know I found that paper. They charged him And he sat in there and I went and talked to him. I'm in college. I'm sitting there and I'm about finals is around the end of May. And I told my college prof, I told him all, I said, I can't think. I can't do this. And he says, well, just get through this year. I couldn't do it. I quit. I had to go to my brother's trial. Now, what makes this story so difficult to tell is that everybody lied. And I do mean everybody. So there was no trail for me to follow. I had to figure out what each person did. Each police department, each one. What did you guys all do to make this a mess? The story was so complicated that people just got lost on it. So to convict Kevin Keith, hey, we're all confused. He must have done something. I dropped out of college. I followed the trial. We go to trial. I'm like, well, Mom, we're going to get to the bottom of this because they don't have any evidence. We sat through an entire trial. There was no evidence. But there was a tape, and I forget how the attorney, he asked him something about his daughter. And the police officer pulled the tape out and they played it. And there was a lady named there by the name of Amy Gibbons, and we haven't found her yet. She doesn't even exist. That tape exists. You can hear the name exist. And this is the person that basically convicted my brother, this invisible witness. I have to take it home. Everything that I'm telling you, I found. That tape was so powerful in there because everybody got a chance to hear it. And you could hear them, oh, we're sitting here, poor ignorant family, with a bunch of children. No men. There was no men there. After my brother was convicted, you should have seen the guns come out. You should have seen how they treated him once that conviction. Now, this is our community. We knew a lot of these people. Went to school with a lot of them. We're here with women and children. Kids the size of RJ. Guns out. They thought we were going to get violent. We're going to jump you with a bunch of women and kids. President Biden is the person that authored the 1994 crime bill. So I've been after him forever and a day. And here I am right here in his backyard. You guys have no idea how I feel and what I would like to tell them. Well, Kevin was convicted of all the lies, and he even said himself, I can't believe they convicted a man with no evidence. And if you get a chance to go in and look at it, you'll see that they have zero fingerprint. They went through all the forensics, no fingerprints, no DNA, no hair, no nothing. Even the description of the car, the lady told them, the car was green Chevy Impala. They have Kevin's girlfriend's car as cream, so they took green and changed it to cream. Well, the thing about the car is when it slid into the snowbank, it left a license plate of 043. 043 took them to the exact criminal that night. But I didn't know that until a few years later when I started gathering my documents. From that 043, Kevin's still arrested. We didn't even know about that. I don't want to lose you in this because there's a lot of stuff that I can't tell you also because the case is still in there. Well, anyway, that 043 revealed who the killer was, and Kevin told him, my car had a 30-day tag. I wasn't even in the area. We had at least 7 or 8 witnesses that attest to where he was at. They only allowed to call one. They called one witness, and they kept everybody else out of the room. I wasn't one of those witnesses. I'm listening. I'm in Canton, Ohio, and I came down the Crestline, and I'm listening to everything. That was the craziest trial I'd ever been on to in my life. It was a lynching, put it that way. And then they said Kevin was to die within 1 year of his conviction. Our family didn't know anything about an appeals process. It almost killed my mother. I mean, literally. So now it's time for me to start investigating what's going on. I sat there probably about 4 or 5 years with all these documents. I mean, I got boxes of documents. Man, what are these things? I don't know what to do with them. I'm not a lawyer. So I go to the lawyers with these documents. I said, can you discuss this with me? They says, well, we have it. We'll get back to you later. Well, it went by 16 years. 16 years, and I continue to gather documents, and I'm formulating this story. Again, these lawyers would not talk to me. I lost a brother who was murdered in 2007. That was my ride to get wherever I needed to be. And, you know, I'm at work, and I hear this, hey man, your brother got killed. I'm like, my brother got killed? My brother's on death row. No, So I had to go to the hospital. I see him laying, I haven't even mourned him yet. I'm so busy in this fight. So I go to all the local pastors that I know. I have nowhere else to go. I'm turning to God. I have nowhere else to go. And the only thing they ever kept telling me is, I'll pray for you. It's the least I can do. I never found out what the most anyone could ever do for me. But I damn sure can tell you what the least is. And it hurts so bad. Now I'm searching on my bed. I've got all kinds of Bibles from all kinds of religions. Because I'm ready to jump religion, jump ship. I'm ready to go in any direction that any religious affiliate group would help. I mean, all kinds of Bibles. I didn't even sleep on the bed. I slept on the floor because those Bibles have become so sacred to me. I went to sleep one night, and he told me, close those Bibles. They won't help you. I closed them, and they didn't help me. He says, I will help you, because I was lost. And he kept coming to me, and I'm talking about my Savior, Jesus. And when I tell people this story, they're like, yeah, all right. I said, well, who do you think you're praying to? Because he answered me. Do you think he does now no longer exist? So he talked to me in my dreams, and he helped me put this case together. I said, wow. I couldn't have told my mom about it, and I just couldn't wait. I stayed in my room for years with all these documents I have. I'm spreading them all over the floor now. Now I'm starting to understand what's going on. And he says, I'm not going to teach you like a lawyer. I'm going to teach you to look into the hearts and souls of men. So when I look into your eyes, I am not looking into your eyes. I'm looking into your hearts and souls. He says, I'm not going to take you to church. My mom says, where are you going? I said, I'm going to sit at the foot of the cross, Mom. I got the blood of Jesus on me now. I no longer ask the church to help me. He was empowering me to help myself. What he educated me on, they cannot teach you in the classroom. When I tell people I went to BSU, I'm not kidding. He taught me to understand man, not the law. The law was written by man, but I didn't understand the man that wrote the laws. So I understand man. And that's what I had to learn to beat this case. Because the lawyers had the law. The lawyers was doing the law books, and he didn't even know it like that. Charles, you need somebody to go out and get the people. And I found that it was the hardest thing to do, was gather the people. The same people that stood back and watched Jesus being executed. Those people. I don't want to call them cowards, but they certainly didn't come to my rescue. They left me out there in the wilderness alone. And he says, hold my hand, walk with me. Man, I was like, this is getting awful spiritual. Seriously, I mean, I had nowhere to go. I'm looking at execution. So for Jesus, that word execution was not a joke. Well, finally, I started getting the gist of it. I volunteered at a halfway house. I worked there about 12, 13 years so I would understand what these documents they were giving me. So I had a fool. And I got in there, and man, I had 25 times. I started off as a volunteer. I was sitting there so tough, I learned all their stuff. I became a counselor. I'm the only person in there without a degree that's working and doing this stuff. They gave me 25 clients. Those guys came out like jailhouse lawyers. I also had access to phone books because now I have a title. I would call all these lawyers around, all these big name lawyers, and their paralegals would answer every question I wanted because hypothetically it was for another client. Oh, the information and things that I was getting coming out of that. Now this is all I had to help my brother because these lawyers for 16 years did nothing. So in 2007, my brother says, Charles, we're going to get rid of these lawyers. I'm like, what? I said, oh, you don't have left us me. He says, well, it's been me and you all along anyway. So we fired the lawyers after 16 years. We went without a lawyer, I think, for like 18 months. We filed 2 motions. I've read so many motions. We filed 2 motions. He tore the court system up because you could tell it wasn't a lawyer. And his subject matter was not about what they were talking about. He talked about racism and all other kinds of stuff in his motions. Well, anyway, they gave us some public defenders in Ohio. She was 23 years old, 24 years old. I think she had just lost her first death penalty case. And I went in there and I was like, man, she looked like a little kid. Cute little girl. I was like, oh my God. We sit there and talked for a while, and I gave her all the stuff I had. I had like 4 or 5 boxes. All bull crap. I said, how did they get all this stuff? Bull crap. I can sit there and come up with 10 tons of lies on you. Well, anyway, I gave that stuff to her, and I left. I said, it's not going to do me any good. She called me about 6 months later. She said, where'd you get all this stuff? She said, I believe your brother's innocent. That was the first time I heard a lawyer really say that. I believe your brother's innocent. And man, did she start fighting. And the minute she started fighting, she ran up against opposition. See, that's what a lot of these lawyers run up against. They file good motions. They put those motions in, like Roderick Reed is talking about, but it's denied. So that makes you look like you have a bad lawyer because everything is getting denied. That's the problem in this system. The lawyer's work is not going through. So we're going on and on and on and on. We talk. In 3 years. Now, we just had these lawyers for 16. She came on in 2007. Once they realized the type of motion she started filing, they went for an execution date. They didn't want to give her time to do anything else. So they only gave her 3 years. I was like, oh my God. In those 3 years, she got my brother clemency. She got my brother clemency in 3 years. From being 23 years old, she got my brother clemency. These competent lawyers can't do anything. My brother told them, you let me go or kill me. If you believe I'm guilty, kill me. They didn't kill him. They offered him what they called a conditional pardon. Okay? We'll take it. The conditional pardon was, we're going to let you out, and if we find out that you've had anything to do with this, we're going to further our investigation, we're going to come back and reimpose life without parole or something to that effect. But that never happened. They took him off death row based on an innocent claim and gave him life without parole right then and there. So it was like a big shift. And he was really upset about that. And I told him, I said, Cathy, you have to take the life without parole because you got to think about mom. You got to think about your family. You got to think about us. So he took life without parole. We've been fighting that. I've been fighting that for the past 14 years. This is about killed me. I started this when I was 34. I'm 64 now. I've consumed my whole life. I've not been able to do anything for my family, my children. I've not been able to hold a job. I haven't been able to do anything. The only thing I could do was use my education as a weapon. I couldn't use it as a career to help my family. I couldn't use it to make myself money. So my education became a weapon. It was formulated as a spear, and everything I went after, I had to pierce. This was flawless. I couldn't even make a mistake because they were waiting for me to make that mistake or say something wrong or out of place where they could attack me, kill my credibility, and that was a reflection on my brother. Man, there's so many things I can't tell you guys because we have a pardon sitting on the governor's desk. 6th Circuit Court of Appeals is trying to get a reversal, so I can't say anything that might would offend somebody, upset somebody, let out a secret, or whatever it is that they're doing. But they've almost killed me. I mean, man, joy is a heck of a word. So Kevin and I, we talk a lot. We say things that we can't even tell mom. My mom's just hanging on. Her thing is, I'm just trying to stay alive so I can hug my son. My mom probably hasn't hugged Kevin in 15, 16 years. He calls home regularly now. He's been taken off death row. He's out there in the population. He put a program out there called Word Masters. And, you know, he's doing such a great job in the prison. He's keeping violence down, but he was recognized for that. And now you have wardens, you have different people saying decent things about him. You know, so in order to try to help Kevin Keith, I've got to expose other people. And now those other people have been and still being exposed. Some have died. I've been through several presidents, several governors, several everything. They have given me an education way beyond. Abe's probably heard bits and pieces of all the things. But one night, Abe and myself, we were going through Texas, and a lady called me. It's like 1 a.m. And I found out that she was a relative of the mayor of Cyrus. And she says, you know, my family and the city council got together and paid for that hit. I recorded it. It's like, what? Oh, this is what, last year? Yeah. I said, are you kidding me? So I recorded it, and I found out that supposedly the mayor and the city council was paying for this hit to kill this kid because the pharmacy board had gotten involved because they were breaking in drugstores all throughout Ohio. I didn't know any of that stuff. These guys were making big money, and the thing it was, they was giving the police kickbacks, and all the girls, young girls that were hooked on drugs, they were bringing the girls to the cops. Now the pharmacy board says, hey, somebody's breaking in our drugstores. So when the pharmacy board comes in, they're telling them, well, we've got this under hand, we've been investigating it, and come to find out they hadn't done a single thing. Not one single thing. So Kevin Keith got blamed for over here selling drugs, but that wasn't where it occurred. It occurred over here. And the pharmacy board guy didn't know anything about my brother or why he was arrested or anything. There was never a connection. So you got two cases going on there with so much paperwork and jargon. Nobody's gonna read all that stuff. When you tell somebody to read something, they skim it. Skim, okay, I read a page and they're done. I'm not gonna sit there and read all that stuff. And that was to a disadvantage on Kevin, as it is with all of these other cases. Nobody's gonna sit there and read all that stuff. We're not readers. So there's a killer out there still. I've been threatened several times. I watch my back all the time because I'm trying to put this guy in prison. I am now trying to get in touch with President Biden and President Clinton and let them know what they've done to my family. They said the violent crime bill was wrong, but those who are on death row can never receive any relief. And if you'll know, after 1994, the spike in wrongful convictions, the spike in death penalties, and all that stuff was up because of the 1994 violent crime bill. We're not fighting that collectively. We're going through each state fighting it individually. But it was the federal government that started it. And that was the 1994 violent crime bill, which in my brother's case was mentioned. So that's why it's such a hard thing trying to get people off death row. There's a bill there, just like we're trying to get a bill. Oh, I'm sure there's so much more I could tell you. It gets deep, but again, it would offend some people. It's going to call some names out, and I know this is being recorded. So I got to go back home and deal with that. They took my brother. He says, Chuck, I haven't been in sunlight in 15 years. He had turned, man, he became so light-skinned. I would go down and visit him. I remember never kissed a man on the lips. But they gave him a death date. He says, Chuck, this is the last time that I'll see you. We said our goodbyes. But it didn't happen. But see, in my mind, all this is going on. Giving you this story like, okay, yeah, all right, but I'm seeing all these things that have happened to him, to me, and all this. And when I'm telling you I'm at the foot and the base of that cross, it's because I had nowhere else to go. And something kept saying, follow me, follow me, follow me. So I did. And by the grace of God, good people started coming into my life. Good things started happening to me. Abe came into my life. Started taking me around the country. And I started seeing other death penalty cases. And I was like, oh my God, this really is BS. This is bullshit. I saw a book over there that says death penalty bullshit. And I said, wow, I got a degree in that. Literally, I have a degree in bullshit. You're not going to bullshit me, period. I fought the state of Ohio for 30 years. I fought lawyers, judges, and everybody. You're not going to bullshit me. Not at all. God has put me in such a way that I stand. And he told me, stand up, get off your knees. Don't pray to me, help me. And I've been standing ever since. And I say I stand with Kevin Keith. I stand with Roger Reed. I stand with Melissa Lucio. I stand with my Savior Jesus. He gave me feet. He says, don't walk on your knees. Stand up to the man. Stand up to the people. Let them see how tall you stand. And this is the courage that he gave me. And he gave me the confidence to come out and speak and mean what I say and say what I mean. But he says, do it with compassion. Don't offend anyone with your words. Empower them to help you too. And just about every person that I've run into has helped me. Abe, Roderick's helped me. Swisher's helped me. Everybody that I've met, Gary, everybody has helped me because they all became a part of me. I am you because I couldn't be me. I couldn't be anything else. I was a nothing. I was just a poor black kid trying to get through college so I could get my degree and take care of my family and buy a home and buy a car, get my credit. I've never had any of that. I've never lost a home. I've never had one. I've never had bad credit. I've never had it. I've never lost a car. I've never had a chance to get in on life. Never had that chance. They've taken 30 years of our lives. And I asked people, and I've asked several people, if you killed someone, or if your child, son killed someone, would you want them to kill him or her? Everyone I've asked said no. Then why do we have a law that we impose upon others that we would not want to be imposed upon us? And why? And I had to start understanding, and it pushed me beyond the Bible. I didn't come out quoting scriptures. I come out looking and seeking for truth, and I'm a truth seeker. And that's what most people don't want to hear. They want you to hear their bullshit. My brother now, as with Roderick, I'm waiting on some news, and I'm praying that it's good news. He has a pardon sitting on the governor's desk. There's a few things going on with that governor and stuff, but again, I can't go into it. Because a lot of this stuff is starting to feel like it's favors, not just necessarily justice or the law. Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals in Cincinnati, they told me back in 2010, my brother had no appeals. He was to be executed. Just this year, I went to Sixth Circuit in Cincinnati, he had an appeal. So I'm asking the lawyers, where'd they come from? I don't know, we'll take it. So now they're getting ready to talk about giving us a new trial. So now we're sitting here with a pardon here and a new trial here. Where did it come from? This guy's supposed to be without parole. Now I can't tell you all the shenanigans I did. I can't tell you everything that I had to do to force these people to do their jobs. That's between me and my Savior. But I'm waiting for that decision. I did a podcast with Kim Kardashian. I went to California, sit down and, spilling my heart to people. And I said to her, all these lawyers out here in this world, and I have to come to you for help. I had to go to a celebrity with all these lawyers out here. How can a celebrity help me? And a lawyer can't. They laughed about her attorney skills. But yet you've been a lawyer all your life, and you can't do nothing. If a lawyer can't get an innocent person out of prison, why bother go to law school? If you can't get an innocent person out of prison, what respect can I have for you as being a lawyer? You're nothing. And that's what we're up against. Myself, Sanchez's, all these people out here. We got lawyers. We've had them for 25, 30 years. And different lawyers, the best lawyers. They can't get past the bullshit. They get past the law, but not the bullshit. Because they didn't study bullshit. They studied the law. They don't understand bullshit. So those motions that they're putting in are excellent. I've read them and read them. I've read so many motions, it's unbelievable. I can write motions. But they don't understand bullshit. I tell everybody I was not educated by Ohio State. I was educated by the state of Ohio. I call myself the minister of justice because I believe in fair play for everyone. I believe life is sacred because we cannot give it, but we're so quick to take it away. Except for ours. So much I've learned. The education I mean, I used to regret dropping, having quit college. I regret that so much, but the education that I have now could not compare. They don't compare. And I can walk among people and hold my head high. I don't have what they have, but I have strength. And it has helped me help other families. I was not selfish with my knowledge. And I'd like to think that I've had an impact on all these cases that I've had a chance to go in. And Abel said, check them out, Charlie. Go ahead and read them out. Let's see what's going on. Come back and tell me. It's bullshit. If you guys would like to listen to the podcast, it'll give you more in depth of the story. I found that there was a guide. It's the only thing that you can go back and keep going over and over and over and over and answering your questions. Because when we leave today, you won't have access to answers. A question will come up, I won't be there. But if you listen to the podcast, it'll answer a lot of your questions. It'll give you a guide, whether it's episode 1, 2, 7, 8, it doesn't matter. I don't need to hear it. I heard it. I gave it to him. I said, I need this to be a guide for the people. I want the people to understand what the death penalty really means. And it's a shame. And I told her that. It's a shame that I have to come to you, a celebrity, that everybody's got something negative to say about it. And you're the only person that stepped out there that cared about my brother's life and how my family felt. I know a ton of lawyers. I used to meet with them on Saturdays, sometimes at a synagogue. There was a guy named Rabbi Spitzer. He provided everything. The judges would come out and say, look, you gotta understand, Monday through Friday, we have a 9 to 5 attitude. Sunday, I go to church. I belong to my family. The only day I have available is Saturday. So I met with them for like 10 weeks on Saturdays while they sit down and they educated me on how to infiltrate the law and break it down. And I figured out how to do that. They showed me a lot. I wish I could stand up here forever and a day, because this is what I've always wanted to do. I wanted to tell somebody what all happened to my brother. But I don't have that much time. And like I said, I have to keep jumping around because that's what they did. Nothing in that investigation led to anything. It's what he did, it's what he did, it's what this one did, it's what that one did. And none of it compiled together meant anything. The jury, like Roderick said, they were all older white people. And they came back. My brother was, they arrested him within 48 hours. Within 90 days, he was on death row. Oh man, they talking about within a year he's gonna be executed. Lost my mind. Then I watched my mother just disintegrate. She's at home now, telling me, watch your back. Don't let them kill you. Because you have to look at the history of what has happened to us. And it's fearful. It's very frightening. But I still have to go out for my brother. I told him I would never abandon him, even if it cost me my own life. Thank you.
Charles. I had a chance to visit Kevin Keith just a few weeks ago. And the spirits are good. He's got a lot going for him. In the governor's office, in the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. But given what happens across the street at that U.S. Supreme Court where they don't care about innocence, we don't know what's going to happen. All we can do is pray and work. So also, on the front page of deathpenaltyaction.org, if you scroll down, you'll find a picture of Kevin Keith, right next to the picture of Ronnie Reed. And that's where you can find more information, links to that podcast, sign a petition. And the epidemic of innocence that we are seeing, we're going to hear about Anthony Sanchez tomorrow night, scheduled to be executed on the 21st of September. And we believe we can show his innocence. But the court won't hear it. procedural bars are what there is. Now, I want to lift this all up in a minute here, but first I want to say that another thing that has happened to me over the last few years, working with these families, has been coming to understand, I can't understand, coming to see people experiencing extreme poverty. That is the consistent theme through these families, the Lucios, the Sanchez, the Reeds, the Keiths, and more and more. And it's so hard. Just last night, another message from a Lucio, I need $40. They got nothing. It's so hard to say no. It also makes it easy to see how easy it is for the system to throw people away. On Wednesday, Charles and Derry and I stopped in Harrisburg and saw Sam Randolph, another innocent person. The other man exonerated and freed off of Pennsylvania's death row. The thing that happened to him, 10 years before he was exonerated and freed, he was beaten severely by guards. Here's a question for you. How many guards does it take to push a prisoner down the stairs? None. He slipped. Right, George? Sam Randolph needs surgery. He's got a doctor that's volunteered to give it to him. He's got people around him that can help. He's got some insurance. He's got no compensation or an apology from the state, but we've raised so far over $32,000 to help him get to $100,000 to help him get that surgery. And I'm not asking anybody here for a dime, but if you could help us put the word out about it, and if you do want to chip in, there's the link. Charles serves as the impacted communities liaison for death penalty action. We got lucky a couple of years ago, suddenly had a windfall of cash, and I hired a couple of people, and Charles is one of them. He travels around and helps me connect where I can't possibly connect with these people, but Charles can look at Roger Reed and know what he's thinking. He's exactly the right person in this role. I can't pay him enough, and I don't pay him enough. That's one of the things that we're trying to do with Death Penalty Action is find ways to lift up people and employ people in doing this work. One day we're going to meet that person that can change our game. But until then, we keep scratching by. More than once, Charles has had to wait for his paycheck while we raise money to make the payroll. So I'm not making a pitch for Death Penalty Action here either, but I will say that if you go to deathpenaltyaction.org and you find the Take Action button in the menu bar and you look down and you see the Impacted Communities tab, and you click on that, you'll find something about the work that Charles does, and you'll also find a list of GoFundMes for people impacted like this. Suzanne, Roderick, Charles, Sam, and about $6,000, and we've just got a couple more that we're going to be adding on. Go put $5 on each of them, or 50, or whatever you can afford. I don't care about money for Death Penalty Action tonight. I want you to help these people who are impacted. There's the GoFundMe for Sam Randolph. Send it out to the world. Help us get that out there so we can help this guy. I do have one confession I have to make. It turns out I have a hole in my pocket. Maybe that $20 was there, but earlier Scott gave me a lot of $200 and it's not in my pocket anymore. So if you found that and can turn it in, that'd be really helpful.
Let's talk. Let's talk.
Okay. If you found the $200 and if you want to add to what we're able to give these people who are impacted communities who are sharing their stories, then there's a bucket over there, there's the GoFundMe's. In each of them, there's actually a link that you can go straight to them, Cash App to Roderick, Cash App to Charles, Cash App to other people, because they're suffering and we can help them. I feel very privileged to be able to stand in front of you and share with you these stories and bring these stories and give people tools to do the work. But it's not me. Just like Sharon said, just like Charles said, this is the Spirit's moving. I'm just a tool. And all of us have the opportunity to allow the spirits to move through us to help. And that's what we're doing when we're here. Each and every single one of us is a leader, simply by being here. Bill Pelkey made a promise to God. If you don't know, this is Bill Pelkey. It might be a little weird to you if you don't know who this guy is, but he's the co-founder of this. But we wanted to make sure he was present. That's why I'm wearing this button. And that's why he's here in this way. It's kind of spooky. I was taking pictures of people, especially with Roderick, because my favorite picture is a picture of Roderick and Roderick's brother and RJ running in front of them. And Bill Pelkey is standing there smiling and looking from that time that they came. So here he is smiling and looking at all of us. So Roderick stepped out, but I want to make sure everybody give him a hug. Give Charles a hug tonight before you go. Before I ask Lucy to give us a final song, I want to just give us a couple of logistical matters. This is the third night of the annual fasting vigil, which means that we are now continuous until it ends. It's a 24-hour, well, it ends up being until midnight tomorrow night. So some people who choose to do so will be sleeping out on the sidewalk. We've got a few extra sleeping bags and sleeping pads and that sort of thing. We'll see what the weather ends up doing. We moved in here because there's a big line of thunderstorms that apparently hasn't come through here yet. And maybe it's dissipated, hopefully. But anyway, some people will stay in this building. We have access to this building overnight, all day tomorrow until midnight. And at midnight tomorrow night is when we will gather. Actually, we'll start to gather about 11:30. After the program tomorrow night, which will be a bit shorter, then we'll all help gather things, put things away, pack up. And about 11:30, we'll gather outside as long as it's not raining or raining too hard. We'll circle up, we'll kind of do what we did at the beginning of this for those of you who are here. Everybody's invited. And then we'll have a meal together on the sidewalk in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, or if it's raining, here in this room. That's essentially the agenda for the next. Scott, want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm getting ready to order our food for tomorrow night, which is going to be pizza, pasta, and salad. I sent everyone who registered an email to make sure that you've given me your RSVP for that. If you did not get an email from me, it means you didn't register. So come see me when this is over and let me know if you're coming to the dinner or not, because I need to know how much food to order. So if you got my email, you can do it via email. If you didn't get my email because you didn't register, come over here. Let me know.
And those who have registered but haven't made their contributions toward this, you can also see Scott. He doesn't have a hole in his pocket. But really, even if you didn't register, you're welcome. There's always people that show up, and we've got plenty of food. And if there's anybody local that has a kitchen that wants to make this a big pot of pea soup or something, we would welcome that too. But in any case, for those of us who's still fasting, we've got a bunch of us here that are still fasting. And even if you aren't fasting, the food is free too. And that's what's happening the next week, the next 20, the next what is it, 9 o'clock, almost 9 o'clock, so the next 27 hours. So, any questions?
I've got a zillion.
So not only is Charles a professor of BS, he's also a professor applies us.
I could have been a lawyer.
Come together, everybody please stand up, let's come together, give all of us a hug together. Lucy, thank you so much for coming.
You know, there's such wonderful voices in this room. I feel like I'm in a choir rehearsal. So I'm gonna give you all a little task. I am sending you light.
I'm sending you light.
To heal you.
To heal you.
To hold you.
To hold you.
I'm sending you light to hold you in love.
I'm sending you light to hold you in love.
I am sending you light.
I am sending you light.
To heal you.
To heal you.
To hold you.
To hold you.
I am sending you light.
I am sending you light.
To hold you in love.
To hold you in love.
Let's see how well our memories work. I am sending you light to heal you.
To heal you.
To hold you.
To hold you. I am sending you light.
To hold you in love.
To hold you in love. I am sending you light. To heal you. To hold you. I am sending you light. To hold you in love.
No matter what you feel or what you choose to show, I'm always there for you and want you always to know.
I am sending you light. To heal you. To hold you. I am sending you light. To hold you in love. I am sending you light. To heal you. To hold you. I am sending you light. To hold you in love.